The Greatest Thing in the World by Henry Drummond. The Analysis, Part 7. My name is Steve Van Eiderstein, and welcome to the Narrowing Path, Walking the Spiritual Walk. And welcome back as we get into the sixth virtue that Henry Drummond discusses in his lecture turned book, The Greatest Thing in the World. And of course, that greatest thing in the world is going to be love. In the beginning of the book, he makes a case for, I believe he calls it the contrast, that love is greater than faith and greater than hope. And then we are talking about the virtues that encapsulate a loving individual, a person that has love in their heart, and the things that are the virtues that a person embodies when they have love. And remember, this is based on 1 Corinthians 13, and which is a pretty popular chapter to read. And also the copy I will be reading out of, this is Henry Drummond's Addresses. And this is actually from 1890, well, technically 1891. And so it'll be a little bit different than the version that you have if you've gotten anything newer than that, because at some point it was revised. I'm still not sure when it was actually revised, but it was revised. And this is more true to the original presentation that Henry Drummond did on this chapter from the Bible. So thank you everybody for joining. I'm looking forward to getting into this one with you. And go ahead, like, subscribe, share, all the good stuff, follow. And I appreciate the support of the channel as we continue to move forward. And again, this channel is dedicated to books and principles and concepts that have really helped me throughout my spiritual journey and my recovery from substances and alcohol and grief and codependency and everything else that comes from a spiritually sick way of living. So I'm extremely excited to be able to jump into this one. And let me tell you, this one has a couple lines in it that really gave me pause. So I'm looking forward to it. So here we go. Let's go ahead and read about the seventh virtue, good temper, in Henry Drummond's book, The Greatest Thing in the World. The next ingredient is also a remarkable one, good temper. Love is not easily provoked. Now we are inclined to look upon bad temper as a very harmful infirmity. We speak of it as being a mere infirmity of nature, as not a thing to take into very serious account in estimating a man's character, a kind of accident, a matter of temperament, and so on. And yet, here, in the middle of the analysis of love, Paul plants this statement, and the Bible again and again comes to that tiny infirmity, as we call it, and makes a great deal of it. It is not a little infirmity to smile at. The peculiarity of ill temper is that it is the vice of the virtuous. It is the one blot on an otherwise noble character. You know men who are all but perfect, and who would be almost entirely perfect, but you say they are hasty, they are touchy, they are ill-tempered. Now, there is nothing that a Christian has to take more trouble to eradicate forever from his being than ill temper. It requires the struggle of years, perhaps of a lifetime, but it has to be done. It has to be done. It is not to be looked upon as an accident of temperament, but it is a sin, one of the blackest sins of all. It is one of the blackest of all sins. It is the symptom of an unloving nature at bottom. a want of patience, a want of kindness, a want of generosity, a want of humility, a want of courtesy, a want of unselfishness are all symbolized in one flash of evil temper. It is the revelation of what is inside a man. And therefore, the man who has that must have his whole nature sweetened. It is not enough to deal with the temper. You must go to the root and sweeten the whole nature, and then temper will die away of itself. But how can a man who has not had a victory over that part of his nature have a part in God's people, in this world or in the next world? How is it possible? Why? A man with a temper such as I have described would make heaven miserable for all the people who are in it. And except such a man be born again, he cannot enter into the kingdom of God. Christ says, "Whoso shall offend one of these little ones which believe in me, it were better for him that a millstone were hanged around his neck, that he were drowned in the depths of the sea." That is to say, it is the deliberate verdict of the Lord Jesus that it is better not to live than not to love. It is better not to live than not to love. Now, I don't know about you. I don't know on first pass how much of that was absorbed. Obviously, I understand that sometimes it's a lot of information when we just do that first reading. That's why we break it down. But if you were following along, you're going to notice some really, really substantial statements that Drummond made in this that really were revealing for me. Like I said, I've read this book many times. This is the first time I've read it. Well, not the first time I've read this version of it, but when I started doing this series, I went through this entire one, and this is the first time I've read. And this, because of this, starting this series, I read the original. But let me tell you, it made a substantial impact on me in a much different way, and I really, really loved this reading. I'm grateful for the things he says in it. These accusations almost that he makes, and because it forces us to really take account of what we're doing here. So let's go ahead and let's get into it. So in this actual reading, he again did not describe good temper in terms of love immediately. Actually, the last one, unselfishness and good temper, he describes in the header for the next virtue. And so I grabbed it out of there just to bring it in here. And in the next episode, you'll hear him say, good temper is love restraining. So the virtue good temper in terms of love is love restraining, right? So it's restraining itself from selfish action. It's a way to say it. And I love the way that he wrote that. And I think that's a beautiful thing, right? It's restraining from our first impulses, our selfish impulses, our animalistic impulses, some might say, or self-serving nature, and choosing to do the kind, loving, and righteous thing. So this good temper being love restraining, I like the way it's summed up. So this good temper is a crucial addition to this list of virtues that Paul has named off, and Drummond has summarized in single termed virtues. And even Drummond emphasizes how important it was. He says, the next ingredient is also a remarkable one. Good temper. Love is not easily provoked. So now the line "love is not easily provoked" is where Drummond has surmised the virtue of good temper from. And again, this is from 1 Corinthians chapter 13, which is a letter Paul wrote to the Corinthians. And that chapter is all about what love is. And this entire book is about the 13th chapter and the sections of it. So Drummond, again, himself described it as remarkable. And I think that's significant to actually be able to, for Drummond himself, because he was an evangelical pastor. He was very much somebody that was out there and trying to really get out the good message. So he talked a lot about different types of virtues. He talked a lot about right living and Christ-like character and righteousness and all these other things. So for him to actually say this is a remarkable one, good temper, love is not easily provoked, it should take notice, or we should take notice of it more so. And so what this whole thing is, just to address what we're aiming for here. So love is not easily provoked. That means we're not easily riled up. We're not easily angered. We're not easily emotionally triggered, right? So this is a condition I believe many people have. I've been somebody with this condition prior to my own spiritual walk, and even in the first years of it. It took a while for me to work this out. I've gotten much better at it. I can't remember the last time I was quick to anger, which I'm very grateful for. And I'm grateful for the process of growth that occurs. But I think everyone goes through time periods where this is a very relevant thing we need to keep at the front of our mind, right? Love is not easily provoked. And I think this short-temperedness, this ill-temperedness is something that today is much more widely viewed as a problem or as something that needs to be addressed in people. I mean, there's anger management classes all over the place, emotional regulation techniques all over the place, right? So it's more widely seen as, hey, if you have a hair trigger, probably shouldn't have said that word. If you have if you escalate quickly to an emotional response, whatever that emotional response is, there's usually something else going on. And but previously, this being ill-tempered or short-tempered was something that was just seen as someone's nature. Drummond refers to it as not being good-tempered was an infirmity. And now I looked up infirmity in our good old-fashioned 1920s dictionary, and it was an unhealthy state of body or mind or weakness. So it was looked as something not good, but it was more so assumed that's just how someone was. It was a characteristic that someone was born with having, or as solidified over the years, and it's not a changeable thing. And so even though they viewed it as a weakness, they did not view it as something that was correctable. And probably if you talk to some people today, they still don't view it as correctable. But I think it's more just from my personal experience and my experience living in the world and working with people, I've found that this is definitely something that can be addressed, right? This is that's a very old idea to think that someone's just always easily to be angered. That just has been properly assessed along the way. But when this was initially written, this is more of a, when I say this was initially written, I do refer to Henry Drummond's book, not the Bible verse, and then not the Bible chapter, right? it was more commonly accepted that it was just a characteristic someone had. But this is not correct. And that's what this entire thing is about. This entire virtue is about, is actually learning that it's not correct. It's something that we can actually address and we can work on. So he goes into, after kind of after addressing the usual method of just dismissing and discounting somebody's ill will or short temper or ill-temperedness, he goes to say, and yet here, right in the middle of this analysis of love, Paul plants this statement. That statement being, love is not easily provoked. And the Bible again and again comes to that little infirmity, as we call it, and makes a great deal of it. It is not a little infirmity to smile at. So the common practice of the time is that just this acceptance of somebody's just got a short fuse, they would say, or so got a easily provoked to anger or any other emotions. This can be sadness, depression. This can be frustration, self-pity, right? The people that are just walking around waiting for something to happen so they can dive into their emotion of choice. And what Drummond is saying is the Bible regularly returns to this as this is a problem that needs to be addressed. So this is part of this transition in this time period from ill temper is just something someone's born with to actually no, there's multiple things in this book that say, hey, it's something you actually need to put some work into and intentionally address along the way, right? So, and because it's referenced multiple times in the Bible, and it's referenced right in the middle of this defense of love, or not the defense, this analysis of love. Like having a good temper is somebody that is got that has love in his heart, right? So he's saying we dismiss it. It should not be dismissed. It's highlighted as something important in a bunch of places in this holy book, and it's actually nothing to smile at. It's nothing to minimize. It's nothing to excuse. So it's very interesting because we still will do this with people. We'll use we'll call them like sensitive, or we'll call them touchy, and we'll excuse people's short tempers or bad behaviors and chalk it up to that they're having a bad day, or say that they were just born that way. Right? Like I said, it's more widely accepted that it's something that needs to be addressed, but we'll still, in the short term, excuse the behavior. And it's like, well, hopefully they work that out. Right? Even for ourselves, we see it happen within ourselves, and we're like, oh, well, I must be just having a bad day. I got to go get a snack. I didn't have my coffee this morning. What a terrible excuse to treat someone poorly. I didn't have my coffee this morning. People do that, though. The whole concept of people being hangry, they think it justifies bad behavior. It doesn't. We'll dismiss our own bad behavior. We'll dismiss other people's bad behavior and tolerate things that really are unhealthy. And just like Drummond's saying here, that's actually a problem that needs to be addressed. That's something that people need to stop minimizing and actually make a priority in their life. It's not something to be excused. Right? Anytime we need to rationalize, minimize, justify, or excuse behavior, there is an issue. And it is our issue we need to take a look at. Now, we're not just sensitive people. We weren't born that way. We don't have the right to just dismiss our own shortcomings. We have to make an honest effort to actually address them. And here he's calling us to task to do so. And he goes, this next line I love. He says, the peculiarity of ill temper is that it is the vice of the virtuous. It is the one blot on an otherwise noble character. When I read that out of this book for the first time, and again, I don't know if it's in the revised copy, if I'm completely honest with you. I didn't look at it, but it was like, if it is in the revised copy, I don't remember reading that. And why I'm just recognizing it today, but it landed on me like it was a ton of bricks. Like it was so significant for me to read that. I paused after reading each one of those lines. Actually, the peculiarity of ill temper is that it's the vice of the virtuous. It doesn't, not the vicious, not the bad, not the kind of doing well. Like virtuous people, this is the vice that they still hold on to, is ill-tempered, short-tempered, right? It is the one blot on an otherwise noble character. So this is people that are doing well in their spiritual journey and their virtuous living and their righteous conduct and their Christ-like living lifestyle, character, whatever you want to call it, your spiritual journey, wherever you are in your life, in your journey, and whatever it is, right? Like for those who are really pursuing this spiritual way of living, this will usually be the one problem that you will hold on to. This will be the one vice that you will see. And as soon as I realized that this was like that it resonated with me, it was because I've seen it. Honestly, I've probably done it, right? It made me take pause because there's so many instances I can think of where virtuous people just go off the rails, not with all of the bad behavior, but they just see, like, they cloak their selfishness and self-centeredness and their self-righteousness in the guise of virtue if they get pushed on certain things, and they become everything that we wouldn't picture a virtuous person to become, right? And then we allow those that we consider righteous to be short-tempered. We allow them to get impatient and mean and condemning and judgmental with us because we call it passion. We relabel their ill temper and their short temper as a passionate person. What a disservice to the word passion. I didn't realize it though. Like, I'm completely honest with you. I did not realize it, that I was doing that. Because it's almost like this, you see this person, you admire their character, the way they live, and then throughout your interactions, you really make them angry. They just go off on you. And because they live such a different way of life, or they have a lifestyle, or they conduct themselves in such a way that you want to be, you believe that their anger is warranted. You believe that their short temper is warranted. And they mean it from a good place, right? They really care about the things they're talking about, this righteousness, about this way of living, whatever it is, and we just allow it. It's like I said, it's almost a given. It's almost expected that that's what's going to happen. We just brush it off. Just like, oh yeah, it's okay. They're allowed to be a short-tempered, angry person. I'm sorry, what? But when you think about that, it's completely contradictory to what we are aiming for with the spiritual lifestyle, but we allow it. If someone lives well enough most of the time, we allow them to have short-tempered or ill-tempered behavior. I didn't know that was something that could be earned. I didn't know I was allowing people to earn it. I didn't know I was giving people grace or the right to be ill-tempered with me until I read this. It's not excusable. It's not something that we get to just push to the side anymore. We have to actually address this. We have to address it fully. The reality is a quick temper is one of the easiest ways to actually push someone away from genuine help. A quick temper is one of the easiest ways to actually turn someone off to spiritual living. You could do everything else right. You could embody all of those other spiritual qualities, but as soon as you have a quick temper, guess what? You're pushing people away from that spiritual path. It's just what happens. Because guess what? It goes against absolutely everything it stands for. Living a spiritual life stands for. Now, the next section sums it up really well. Now, there is nothing that a Christian has to take more trouble to eradicate forever from his being than ill temper. It requires the struggle of years, perhaps of a lifetime, but it has to be done. It has to be done. It is not to be looked upon as an accident of temperament, but it is a sin, one of the blackest of all sins. So, I don't restate it has to be done because I want to. It's written that way. Perhaps of a lifetime, but it has to be done. It has to be done, right? So, addressing this short temper should be of the utmost importance for every single person. And I know there's a lot of people that listen to this podcast that aren't necessarily Christian. I want this podcast to be available to anybody that practices a spiritual way of living and is on that spiritual journey. So please, when it says Christian-specific things, please hear the words you need to hear for your applicable practice. So it's not just Christians, though, that need to address this. This is anybody that's living a spiritual way of life. Anybody that's trying to achieve a virtuous, principled, righteous way of living needs to understand that this quality of ill temper needs to be intentionally worked on, needs to be dismissed, it needs to be dismantled, it needs to be removed from our behaviors. He goes so far to say this task is worth doing even if it takes a lifetime, which is actually really important that he put that in there, because he's saying, he said it can take the struggle of years or perhaps a lifetime. This is not a quick game. This is not a one and done. This is not simple. It takes a lot of action. It takes a lot of intentional action. It takes a lot of honesty, open-mindedness, willingness, transparency, vulnerability, and to ask and invite in help. But it is something that needs to be priority. It needs to be of the utmost importance to address this in your own behavior and your own soul. He says it's one of the blackest of all sins. It's one of the darkest spots on our spirit to have this. And that seems like a pretty substantial statement to say, right? Now, why is that? Drummond's great. He tells us in the next paragraph here. He goes, it is a symptom of an unloving nature at bottom, a want of patience, a want of kindness, a want of generosity, a want of humility, a want of courtesy, a want of unselfishness. All are symbolized in one flash of evil temper. Excuse me. I just want to make sure I wrote that right. Symbolized? I feel like it was a different word. No, it is symbolized. Are all symbolized in one flash of evil temper, right? Oh, got it. Sorry. So it says a want of all these things, right? So, which means a lack of all of these things. So a demonstrable lack of all of these other virtues. All the virtues he listed were the first 6 we talked about, by the way, in this analysis of what love actually is. So he's saying ill temper, when it flares up, shows that within us there is a lack of patience and kindness and generosity and humility and courtesy and unselfishness, right? So this is something that sits underneath all of it. How did he say it? It is a symptom of an unloving nature at bottom. So you're building on a foundation. If you have an ill temper, if you have a quick temper, it means you're building on a foundation that is unloving. And there's no question about that, the way he writes this. It is a symptom of an unloving nature. It doesn't say a symptom of potentially an unloving nature. It's just immediately what it is. It negates all the other virtues you might intentionally be practicing. Because guess what? When you have a flare up of this temper or whatever it is that comes forth in you, when you have this these emotions triggered, that automatically takes all those other things and puts them in the back burner. Automatically makes them inauthentic and disingenuous, because what's held within your heart is selfishness. What's held within your heart is self-centeredness, right? You still have a selfish and self-centered soul. So everything that you do, even though it might be good intentioned, even though it might be the right action, if you have a quick temper, everything that you've done for good will be negated in just a moment with somebody. You'll be presented as a hypocrite. Your credibility will be gone. The trust will be destroyed just because of a lack of ability to actually manage and regulate our own emotions. So this is one of the most damaging things that we can embody. This is one of the most damaging characteristics that we can come across, or that we can hold on to. All right. Now, this is where a lot of people end up in 12-step fellowships, when they've only put down the substances and the alcohol, and they're living as they always have, right? And they become miserable. Or when someone's trying to intentionally practice kindness and love and forgiveness, right? And and it's a forced external change, right? I talk about this all the time here, and this is a great presentation of it. This ill temper, right? People that force an external change in their life, meaning they are intentionally changing a behavior, right? They're putting down the drink and they're staying away from it. They're putting down the drugs, they're staying away from it. They're walking away from gambling and they're staying away from it. If you do not change the bottom, as it says here, if you do not change your heart, if you do not change your soul, you will just always be miserable. You will always have that short temper. You will always be restless, irritable, discontent, unsatisfied with life. You will always be quick to be frustrated. And you will take things personally. You will feel vulnerable and sensitive. Those are symptoms of somebody that's forcing external change but not doing the internal work. Put a little pressure on you, and suddenly everything that you want to stand for goes out the window, and your selfish practices show up right in your face again. Those selfish behaviors are transparent. It shows a lack, a quick temper shows a lack of true and authentic change. So you're in that gray area of, what am I going to do next? And that gray area, by the way, is where you suffer. I laugh at that, but it's serious. I laugh because we choose to stay there, which people might not like it, but it's true. We have so many tools available to us now, so many paths to take, so many opportunities to improve our lives and our character and actions. We just need a little bit of humility to actually grab onto and do, but we refuse. We sit in the gray and wish we could do the old behavior, but no, we can't do the old behavior. Know that we can take certain actions to improve our demeanor and our character, but don't want to take certain actions. So we sit in this purgatory. We sit there stuck. And it is miserable. It is painful. And we will take it out on people. We will be that short-tempered, ill-tempered person. We will not have a good temper. We will be very quick to anger. We will be very easily provoked. Now, what do we do to fix it? He says it is a revelation of what is inside a man. And therefore, the man who has that must have his whole nature sweetened. It is not enough to deal with the temper. You must go to the root and sweeten the whole nature, and then the temper will die away of itself. So, again, he's restating it's a revelation of what's inside the man. And this reminds me of, some of y'all listening might know this gentleman. There was a man that passed away 20 years ago, I think, named Wayne Dyer. And I saw one of his videos on YouTube when I was first in recovery, first on the spiritual journey. And he said something that at the time was so incredibly profound to me. He said, what happens when you squeeze an orange? And after a couple of answers, he says, orange juice comes out. And then he asked people why orange juice came out, which seems like a really odd and simple question, but people were confused by it. And he said, because that's what's inside. That's what Henry Drummond's saying right now. You squeeze us a little bit, and that flash of anger and hatred or frustration and judgment and condemnation comes roaring out. Guess what? That's what you have inside of you. It wasn't just magically manifested by someone giving you a offhand remark. It wasn't because you failed at something, right? It was the pressure came on and your true nature came out. All of those behaviors that you're forcing yourself to change because everyone's telling you it's a good idea. You might even think it's a good idea to change them, but you haven't done the actual work to change your soul. Guess what? That's what comes out. What is inside you will remain inside you. You get anger because you get angry and frustrated because you have anger and frustration within you. Orange juice comes out because it's an orange and it's what's inside. It's pretty simple that we like to fight it. So the next thing I want to address is he says it is not enough to deal with the temper. And this might be a hot take. This might be something that people do not like. So it is not enough to just cope with the anger. It's not enough to just cope with the temper. It's not enough to just learn a million coping skills to deal with this. I'm sorry, it's not. I've always believed that people that only learn the coping skills and don't do the work to resolve the things that cause the emotion that you need the coping skills for are shorting themselves. You can learn all the breathing exercises you want. You can learn how to pause in every situation. You can go through as many communication trainings as you want. But at the end of the day, the cause of your ill temper must be addressed. I know I had to address it because it's exhausting. The reality of it is this stuff is exhausting to deal with on a daily basis. When you're constantly having to cope with your own angry reactions to people in your life or situations in your life or institutions in your life, it is so taxing and crippling and tiring. We start to think of what's the point? Why are we even doing this stuff? Why are we even forcing ourselves to act in a way that is healthier when all we're doing is just holding the anger inside? I love how he references it. The whole nature must be sweetened. We have to start at the root of this whole thing. You need to free yourself from what's causing the anger and the resentment that's causing this ill temper within you. And find a perspective change that's sufficient enough to allow your temper to fade, to allow your defensiveness to back down. Some of you might have recognized the verbiage that I used there. A perspective change sufficient enough. That's what a lot of people describe recovery as, and they describe that as a spiritual awakening. Because you have to do some work, and you have to intentionally view whatever it is that you're holding inside of you different to free yourself from it. To let the temper just disappear. Instead of having to cope with the temper, don't let it actually manifest. By doing the actual work, by having the honest conversations, by doing the inventories, by actually becoming willing to do the things that you know will help you or that have helped many others. You have to tackle this thing at the roots. If not, you're in for a very long, arduous, exhausting, and painful life of trying to just cope with yourself. And then Drummond talks about after this that it's kind of made me laugh, that short-tempered people would make even heaven miserable. And I thought that was a funny aspect to add into this book, and that it was important as well. And I would agree. And he said that we need to have that change in our soul. He said we need to be born again, is the way he phrased it. And it really is becoming a new person when you are willing to do this work. If you recognize you have this ill temper and you're not a good-tempered person, and you want to change it, you become a whole new person. I became a whole new man when I addressed this. My perspective on life had to change. My resentment towards the world and my nihilistic, hateful viewpoint had to be let go of. I was a miserable person, but suddenly I was willing to view things a different way, and even though nothing changed, everything changed. And what a beautiful thing that is. And Drummond ended the reading here, this section, this virtue, on a Bible verse. It's Matthew 18:6. And it's talking about how we need to be like children, and hold love in our hearts, and how the only thing that makes life actually worth living is holding love in our hearts. And without it, it's a pretty painful way to go. It's a purposeless way to live. It's a self-serving and selfish way to live. And that is not where any of us want to be. So, but that's it. That's the virtue for this week. Thank you all so much for coming along with me. I really, really do appreciate it. Again, this was number 7. We've got 2 left. And the next one's going to be guilelessness. Not a word you hear at all today, right? Very rarely. Doesn't have the, or no, I don't know if I've heard it any time in years anyway. So I'm looking forward to digging into this one with y'all. I think the next one will be a little bit shorter, but always full of good information. So thank y'all again for joining me, and I'll look forward to it next week. So until next time, thanks.